Hi, good morning, everyone. Okay. See, in the last session, we have completed with the relationship part. And what we have seen, let me take a quick revision onto that as well. No. It's yet to be completed if I'm not wrong. Just give me a moment. Okay. So up to roll-up summary, we have seen. That's good. So the last part of relationship is one-to-one relationship, right? So what does it means by a one-to-one relationship? So when we say one-to-one, this actually means that every parent must be associated to one child only, right? See, if you go with a lookup relationship, then in that case, child could have 40 parents. If you go with master detail, child could have 2 parents. Precisely one-to-one relationship actually means that every parent must have only one child and not more than one. So, this particular diagram signifies the same thing, that every parent should always be associated with only one child. So how come this is possible? First of all, with that we are obviously going to see. I shall talk about more about the requirement. We'll first of all understand what is the requirement to have this one-to-one, and then we will going to see like how exactly we can make this implemented. How can we implement one-to-one relationship? That would be second part of discussion, right? In the first, what exactly is it means by a one-to-one relationship? Whenever you can see that one parent should have only one child, and if somebody try to make an association with another child, for example, this child number 1 is already associated to parent. Now, if someone tries to associate one another child to this particular parent, the same parent, maybe this is child number 2. So in that case, our system should automatically generate one error with some sort of significant error message, like this parent already is being associated with a child, or maybe you cannot make a new association when already there is a child associated, something like that. So this is what first of all is called as one-to-one, right? And understand one thing, one-to-one is not hierarchy. One-to-one is not an hierarchy relationship. I have seen so many videos in YouTube where they have tried to explain that one-to-one and hierarchies is same. But actually it is not. Actually it is not. And we can easily identify that what is the difference. When we say hierarchy, the parent and the child both belongs to same object. And I have shown you the example of user object for this. We even created a hierarchy relationship inside user object. So when we say a hierarchy relationship, hierarchy typically is being formed, or maybe self relationship, that is also good. I mean, if you call hierarchy as a self relationship, there is no issue in that. But when you consider one-to-one and hierarchy or maybe self as same, there is the point where you are wrong about this. So in hierarchy relationship, the parent record and child record both belongs to same object. An example what we have taken for this was user object, that users are associated with another users in the child or parent. So that was an example. That was an example of your hierarchy relationship, right? So there was only one object that time. There was only one object, user object. But here, as you can see, there are two distinguished objects. There are two different objects. One of them would act as a parent, another would act as a child. And that's a normal thing. That's a normal thing. We started relationship by saying that whenever you try to form a relationship, you have to decide among the two objects, you have to decide which one is parent and which one is child. Once you identify the child, you have to create the relationship inside the child object. Now, similar concept applies over here as well. Inside a one-to-one relationship, there must be two objects. There must be two objects. And when there are two objects, how come you can say that this is hierarchy? No, it's not. Why? Because in hierarchy, there would be only one object, right? There would be only one object, and the records of object would be associated to among each other. That's a different story. That's a whole new different concept. All right, let's say. So this is what one-to-one. And before going further with this, you first of all would identify, you first of all make this difference that one-to-one is another thing, hierarchy relationship is another thing. All right. And these are not the same, by the way. All right. Now, what is a requirement? What is a requirement? All right. I'll show you what is a requirement. Let me try to replicate one issue over here. And there, by getting this issue, we would identify how to solve this. Say there are so many hiring managers, right? Let me try. Yeah, there are so many hiring managers. And you can see these all are the hiring managers. And if I go with positions, if I go with positions, and let me try to generate few more positions over here, because for this example, I should have 5 to 6 data. So how many positions we right now having with Java software testing? All right. Let me try to create a new position called as associate Salesforce developer. Number of vacancies would be 10. HR email ID is, for example, Qasim.14.5.com. And the status of position is open and approved. Contact number would be something like this. Location is Chennai. And if I'm not wrong, I have removed that filter by which we were only selecting those hiring manager belongs to position location. I have filtered that. Let me select Ujjwal for this. Minimum budget is something like this, maximum. Today would be the opening date. It's 27 because it is taking the date of US, not India. And the closing date is 31st of December. Let me copy the same thing into skills required and positions required. I'm checking both of them, and let me now save this. All right. I shall clone this and I'll create few more positions like a senior Salesforce developer. And this is, let me go with the same process. Let me assign it to the Ujjwal once again. And I will be saving this. Let me clone it once again and technical lead. And let me now save this. Okay. This much data is sufficient, right? I'll go with all these positions. These are the number of the position. Let me edit few columns and I will bring for which, who's the hiring manager for this, right? HR manager. Okay. Now, as you can see, these are different positions, and these positions have been applied to the hiring managers. So like associate Salesforce developer has been given to Ujjwal, Java developer Manish Singh. Again, Manish Singh is for senior developer Ujjwal, and then Akshay Dave and Ujjwal. Right. This is what I could say the present in a present scenario, in a present state of this product, you are being able to select same hiring manager for different positions. I told you the concept of sprint. I have told you that what is the name of that software methodology what we use for development. Can anyone in the chat respond that what is that software development methodology that we use for product development in the case of Salesforce? Yes. Can any one of you in chat just give me the name of that software methodology that we use for software development, the application product development? Yes. Anyone in the chat? No one. All right. That's good to know. By the way, that is agile. That is agile methodology of software development. If you remember, I have told you something related to this diagram or maybe some another diagram similar, but I told you what is a sprint, what is an agile, how agile actually is differed from the conventional waterfall model of software development. And I have asked you to go with this. I have asked you to learn agile methodology of software development, and typically how agile is different, how agile is more advantageous as compared to the conventional waterfall model, and why you have to learn this. There would be so many things during the course of this training. There would be so many things that you should know, but that is not a part of Salesforce. That is not a part of Salesforce. This topic, agile methodology, is something we call this as a software engineering. Those who are software engineer in class, they might have learned this during their graduation, whatever. But those who doesn't belongs to this, right, they have to understand about this, right? Because you're trying to go with a software development technology. You might be aware about, you must have been aware about some other things as well, right? So that is the reason you should learn. That is the reason you should take it seriously whenever I say something, that this is something you should go and Google and learn it. You have to take it seriously. If you take it, it would going to benefit you. If you're not, this is something that would be missing throughout in your knowledge. Although you can call yourself good in Salesforce, but you doesn't know, apart from the Salesforce, there are few more surroundings. There are so many things in the surrounding that you should also be aware about. But because you have not taken this seriously, you would not going to learn that, right? So agile methodology of software development is something that we follow in industry. And how we develop, we always develop in sprints. How we develop, we always develop in sprint. What is a sprint? A sprint is a local cycle of development. This is not a complete product development, because there would be some number of sprints, and that is decided by, the project managers. That's decided by delivery managers, senior persons in the team. Sometimes they are also called as Scrum Master. That is also certification. I mean, if you are an MBA person and you are working as a business analyst, you could take one certification called as Scrum Master certification. And that has nothing related to Salesforce. That's an independent certification. That's an independent certification, Scrum Master. So for which you have to actually go with, these kind of courses. And from here, you have to take that certification. So these are those people, those who decides every sprint and all that. And they would modulize your whole product into different sprints. They would modulize your whole product into different sprints. So after every sprint inside agile methodology, we submit the product for CR, client review. We submit it for the client review, and we ask the client to test it and in their own environment. We create the environments for them as well. We also have our environment, and these environments are always sandboxes. These environments are also sandboxes. See, you would be going to learn this later on in deployment part. Later on in the deployment part, you would be going to learn this. I mean, what is these terminologies? What does it mean by the sandboxes? There are so many different types of sandboxes. DevPro, developer, UAT, or maybe a full copy sandbox. So what usually happens is the full copy sandbox, the final version, the full copy sandbox. This is the environment what usually client is having an access. And what you do the development somewhere around over here, maybe in Dev Sandbox or Dev Pro Sandbox. Your internal testing goes over here, maybe over here. Or sometimes you directly launch it to the full copy. This also happens. This depends between company to company. All right. There is no standard process for this. There's one thing is always we make a separation from our environment to the client environment. So before we release anything onto the actual production environment, before we make it available on actual environment, we try to develop and test it in something called as sandboxes. So what we do is we develop the user, we create the user. How to create the user, you would also going to learn that in securities. So we create the user for our clients over into this environment. And whatever you have developed, for example, this is something you develop, you make it available, you make it deployed to this environment. It would come over here and you would ask your client, could you please perform a testing of this? This is the outcome of first release. This is my first release. This is the outcome of first sprint, second sprint, whatever. Now client would going to test it, client would going to test it into his own environment. And that obviously would not be the production, because production is just for the finest version, the final version. the final version of the product without any flaw, with everybody's agreement that this is something we want, then this is something, this is what we have developed. That final version always goes to production. There would be no testing. There would be no changes. See, once you create something and you launch it to the production environment is that environment where you cannot make any modification. Understand? So production is just for the final copy of the product. If you are still in the development phase, if you are still in the testing phase, you have to do everything into the sandboxes. You have to do everything into the sandboxes. So there are few sandboxes for our team. Those who are developers, those who are software testers. There are few of the sandboxes for our managers. And there are one, or maybe not, usually it is one only. There's one sandbox for our client as well, so that we could launch the product onto the sandbox, and we could ask our client, please perform the testing, please perform the CR, and let us know, are you ready with this? We can make this as a final, we can mark this as a complete, or if there are something more to be get done. So as a part of sprint, that is what we do. That is what we do. And probably this is going to be the last time when I'm explaining you the agile once again. I did it in the past, but because no one has answered, I feel this becomes again onto my shoulder. This becomes my responsibility to revise that topic. आप अगर पिछली चीजें भूलते जाएंगे और मैं आपको आगे लेते चला जाऊंगा तो फिर कोई मीनिंग नहीं है. अल्टीमेटली इस तरह से पता चल ही जाता है. मुझे वो चीज रिवाइज करनी पड़ेगी. आप जितनी बार ये चीज मांगोगे उतना हमारा जो वक्त है वो इसमें ज्यादा जाएगा. ठीक है, बट अल्टीमेटली मुझे तो करना ही पड़ेगा, बिकॉज समथिंग इज रिलेटेड टू दिस टॉपिक. और आपको अगर उसका पिछला नॉलेज नहीं है तो आई हैव टू एक्सप्लेन दैट, राइट? चलिए, सो वन मोर डेविएशन कम्स आउट inside one sprint, inside one CR. We develop a system like this, where for different positions, we could select the same hiring managers. As you can see over here, that this hiring manager usually is associated with this position as well as this position, and he is also handling this as well. Similarly, you can see that Mr. Manish Singh is also handling two different positions. Now, when we submitted this version to our client, when we submitted this for the review, the client put up a comment over here that actually there is a deviation. This is not what he wanted it to be like. And they said to us that they are having certain internal policies that once if an hiring manager, for example, Ujjwal was given a position called as technical lead. Now, Ujjwal being a hiring manager, he was given a position called as technical lead. That means he becomes that responsible person to hire candidates for this position, technical lead. Now, till the time Ujjwal is associated with this position, till the time the Ujjwal is associated with this position, we cannot give any another position to Ujjwal, or maybe with some other hiring manager. This is not the case with just Ujjwal. I'm just trying to explain you that if an hiring manager has been given a position, we cannot give another position to him. We cannot give another position to him. So if Mr. Manish Singh was already being allotted a position called senior manager, we cannot give him this position. Understood? This is what the policy is. So this actually means what? Let me come with this diagram. This actually means one hiring manager should have only one associated position, because position is child, hiring manager is parent. And if somebody tried to give one another position to this hiring manager, it should give an error. That this hiring, some significant mass, this hiring manager already is engaged with some other position, something like that. So basically, this is what the requirement. And how now let's come to the fact how we can solve this. What is the requirement? Requirement is to associate or maybe to introduce one-to-one association over here. That if an hiring manager has been associated to a position, if a parent is having already a child, if it is not having a child, that's good. But if it's already having a child, then in that case, If somebody tried to give another child, if somebody tried to give another position to that hiring manager, we should throw some error at this. We should, first of all, we should stop him. So this is what is where, like, we have to implement a functionality called as one-to-one association. Now, how to make that possible? Let's come to this part, right? So this is where we should create one-to-one association. Now, I have told you one thing. See, when in this question about relationship, if they would ask you this in interview, what you have to say is like there are 6 different types, 6 different forms of relationships. Lookup external, lookup master, detail, and hierarchy. These are like direct relationship. These are standard relationship. And why I am calling them to be the standard? Because on the page, on that user interface where you select the data type, whenever you create a new field, there you can see the name of lookup external master. And if you are onto the user object, you can even see the name of hierarchy. But many to many and one to one, these are not direct relationship. But that doesn't mean there would not be any circumstances where you have to create. Yes. And that was the reason. See, before understanding how to create many to many and one to one, what we have discussed is why to create. Why to create many to many? Why to create one to one? That was more important, because see, you must be aware about requirement. You must be aware about scenario, right? You must be aware about scenario. And if you remember many to many, I told you that when there are 2 objects, if you wanted to create a relationship, one of them should be the child, another one should become parent. But what happens in many to many was like both of them was acting as a parent, and we cannot even make one of them as a child. In that case, there would be no direct relationships. How to create that? How to create a relationship in that case? There would obviously no direct relationship. How we are going to solve this? Solution was many to many. You have to create a third object, a common child called as junction object. With the help of junction object only, we could create many to many relationship, right? So this was the requirement about many to many. Now, what is the requirement of one to one? If simple, I wanted one parent should have only one child, not more than one. Every parent must associate with only one child record. When this is your circumstances, you have to go with one to one. These two are, by the way, they are not direct relationship, but that doesn't mean that there is no circumstances is going to be. अगर ऐसा नहीं होता तो मैं आपको पढ़ा रहा भी नहीं होता. समझे आप? अगर ऐसा नहीं होता तो मैं आपको ये चीज नहीं पढ़ा रहा होता. But I know because these are some of the circumstances in real time. So you must be aware how to tackle this kind of situations. So whenever this is the requirement where we wanted that one parent object should only have one child object associated to it. One parent record should have only one child record associated to it. So there we implement something called as one-to-one. Now, how to implement that? So whenever we wanted to create one-to-one, the one-to-one is formed by 2 different functionalities. The first is roll-up summary that you already have studied in the last lecture. And the second is validation rule. Validation rule. I'll make you aware about this, don't worry. Roll-up summary was our last topic, where I told you that what is a roll-up summary? It's a system generated read-only field. It's a system generated. When I say system generated, means you would not going to generate any value for this. Rather, what is the value inside roll-up summary field is being generated by the system, by certain calculations. And it's a read-only field. That means once the value has been generated, we don't have any rights to modify that. So we cannot modify the value, the record, whatever is the record of that field. So that's a system generated read-only field. And there were 4 different functions for that: count, minimum, maximum, and sum. These are 4 different functions. You can use one of them into one roll-up summary field would have only one function. How many roll-up summaries could be created on an object? There was answer like 25 roll-up summaries. That is a governor limit. And there were few considerations more. There were few more considerations. The relationship should always be master detailed relationship. Roll-up summaries are always created onto the parent object, not onto the child. So these were some technical details. We completed all them. We have seen 2 to 3 use cases onto this. I have given you a few of the assignment. Hopefully you have solved that. All right. Now, one-to-one association, whenever I wanted this relationship, this type of relationship to be created, the relationship, one-to-one relationship, one-to-one association is always created by two features of Salesforce. That is a roll-up summary with count function, with count only, not minimum, maximum, and sum, only count. You have to create a roll-up summary field with count function and a validation rule. Roll-up summary is completed. Let me introduce you with something called as validation rule. What is an validation rule? All right. You would be going to learn for validation, there are two things in Salesforce. But first of all, let me describe this word, validations. See, I mean, you usually go to a mall, a shopping mall. For example, you go to this inside over here. What is that medical chalk where you have? Yeah, wherever you go, they would first of all do a frisking, right? They would, as a security measures, they would scan you and they would see through this, right? Okay, you shouldn't be carried any sort of weapons or whatever, right? So they would first of all, and you go to airport, you go to a railway station, there as well. They would scan your luggage as well, right? And they would make it sure that nobody with some unauthorized kind of person or maybe weapons or they shouldn't carry things like this into a public place. What is that they are doing? They are trying to validate you. They are having certain rules with them. You cannot carry a weapon, you cannot carry this thing, you cannot carry that thing. So based on all those things, they are checking you, and they would going to decide whether or not you are a person who is being allowed to enter into this building or not. So what they are doing, there's something called as validation. Now, for example, if I am, let me come to this technical part. If I'm storing a new record inside any of the object, I'm inserting a new record. Or maybe I'm editing certain records. I'm performing an edit. I'm updating the old existing records. So what operation I'm performing? Either I'm performing insert, or maybe I'm performing update. Or maybe I'm just deleting a record. I'm deleting a record. So I am performing insert, I am performing update, or I am performing a delete operation. So before performing insert, before performing update, or before performing delete, if I wanted to check for something, for example, let me show you one example. All right, let me give you this command, by the way, guys. I'm giving you this command to unmute yourself. You given. Tell me how many different ways I could make a field mandatory. How many different ways in Salesforce you could make a field mandatory? Please unmute yourself, those who wanted to give the answer. How many different ways you could make a field required in Salesforce? Yes.
2 ways. Yeah, 2 ways.
Yeah, I mean, instead of count, just let me know the process.
Page layout.
And
Page layout.
Page layout was first, second.
While creating any object.
While creating a field, actually, not object.
Field. Sorry, field.
That is the required checkbox. 2. Okay. Anything
and
else?
Third, maybe the coding you told.
Coding, Apex triggers. Third, yeah. All right. Fourth,
validation rule.
बिल्कुल सही. Fifth, most of the answer you guys have given. Visual force, not trigger, but visual force based. All right. Chalo. Please go on mute. So there are 5 different ways you could make a field a required field. First of all, there's a required checkbox. Either you create a field or you perform the editing as well. That time also it is available. No, required checkbox. And second is page layout customization. The difference between these two is like when you make a field required by required checkbox. When you make a field required by a required checkbox. For example, this is one of the field. If I go and edit that, and if I make it required by required checkbox, as you can see, This becomes required both on the page layout as well as on the database level. So if I'm entering certain values into this object and this field is over there, you have to enter the value. If you are entering the value from page layout from the user interface, that time also it is required. And even I mean, if you are entering the value from the coding part, that time also it is required. That is what is, I mean, you make it required by required. But when you make it required by the page layout customization, that becomes mandatory only on page layout, not on the database level. And this already, if you remember this, you know, I have explained you this as well. Okay, what is the difference if you make it required from the required checkbox, whereas if you make it required by the page layout customizations, right? So this we have seen, red star, blue dot, guys, if you remember, right? Now, for example, let me show you that I'm making this minimum budget as required, but from the page layout customizations, right? So you can see a red star come over here. So it is required only onto the page layout, but it's not onto the database level. But see, if I go and create a new position, right? Over to the interface, both of them seems to be required. And see, from here, we cannot identify okay, which one is being required on page layout and which one is being required by required checkbox, because both of them, the appearance would be the same. The appearance would be the same. All right. Now there is one more way to make a field required, and that way is using a validation rule. These three I have told you are non-codings. These three are non-codings. Your Apex trigger and visual force are coding. I mean, through the coding also you can make it required. But required checkbox, page layout customization, and validation rules, these are non-codings. All right. So let's consider, I'm now showing you the third technique, that if I wanted to make a field required, for example, this field open date, or maybe contact number, I wanted to make this field required, but I somehow, I mean, because of certain reasons, I don't use required checkbox, not even I use page layout customization, but still I wanted this field contact number to be a required field. So what I did, I create a validation rule for this, right? So with the validation rule, that third technique, how could you make a field required? Let me try to show you that. And this would introduce you how to create a validation rules. Then we'll come up to one-to-one, all right? So contact number, you can expand force.com and you can see view validation rules, right? There's a new, of course, over there. So onto this page, right? Actually, this page is this one, right? This one, standard fields, custom fields. You scroll it down, it would show you related lookup, filters, validation rules, triggers, page layouts, and everything. Compact layouts, everything is available over here. So onto the validation rule section, you can see, I mean, how many validation rules right now have been. So there is no rule. I mean, we haven't created anything so far. So let me create a new validation rule. What I'm making contact as required, right? This is what I'm making. I'm making contact as required. Now, for this, I would be using, whenever you create a validation rule, there is a formula. Based on that formula, we decide the error conditions. Based on this formula, what we decide is error condition. When we wanted to fire this error, see, if you are making this field as required, so if I ask you when should the error would be fired, error should be fired if this field is empty. If this field doesn't have any value, you have given the value over here, everywhere. But you haven't given the value for contact number. If contact number field is empty, is blank, is null, if it doesn't have the value, then we wanted to fire the error. So what is my formula, or what I have to check for the error before firing the error? What should I check? I should check that contact number field is blank. If it is blank, if it is null, if it is empty, then I should fire an error. Then I should give an error. right? So that is what I'm going to check it. So there are so many different functions over here. There are so many different functions, right? I know what is a function. It is blank function. I can directly use it, but I wanted you to see it once from here. Blank values. So see, you can categorize them. If you wanted formulas for date and time, you can select this. You're going to see only those things, those who are for date and time, those functions. If you wanted some logical, mathematical, text advance, you can select. If you, for example, I would be going with is blank, right? The formula which the function which I'm using would be is blank. That's logical. If I'm having certain mathematical operation with me, I would select the category of functions as maths. And then, I mean, ceiling, floor. I can assume that you guys know this. जो हमारे decimal point numbers होते हैं, if I wanted to round up them, so there are in the rounding rules, there are there are two rules, ceiling और floor. अगर वो 0.5 के पहले का है तो you can take it ceiling, अगर आपको उसके बाद का चाहिए तो floors, है ना? Then cos, log, minimum, maximum, round, square root, 10 निकालना. These are mathematical functions. So based on what operations you wanted, there are functions over here. I would go with logical or all functions, whatever. I have to select a function called as is blank. Is blank, right? I would be going with is blank and insert this. So is blank, and inside into this expression, I would insert that field. To which field I wanted to see the contact number, right? Let me select this. So see, it's pretty simple thing here. There is no need to worry about this. There is no need to see this as a complicated thing. You are not writing anything over. You are selecting just from the given rules, given set of functions. You are selecting everything. What you are selecting, what you are seeing for is blank, contact number. Contact number, if it is blank. What I'm designing? I'm designing error conditions. I wanted to fire an error. What should be the error? यहाँ पे लिखने वाला हूँ मैं वो error message. But what this error message should appear when? It should appear when is blank. तो आपको error conditions डालनी पड़ती हैं. कि before firing an error, what should be get checked? If this, क्या बोलना चाहिए उसको? I mean, if this happens, then fire this error. If this satisfies, then fire this error. What satisfied? What a condition is blank contact number. If contact number is blank, I should give a message. Please enter the contact number. This is my message, custom message. You can give any one of them. Please enter the contact number. Contact number. Now, where you wanted to display this? Top of the page? No. I particularly wanted this to get displayed on a field. That field is going to be, you can select it from here. I'm selecting contact number, right? So if contact number field is blank, display one error. Please enter the contact number. On where? Top of the page? No, I wanted this to get displayed onto the field. Now let me save this. All right, let me save this. So this is what you just have created, something called as validation rule. Now, if you go to the position object, you go to the position and you create a new position over there. You entered the value. The position name is, for example, maybe a .NET developer. The number of vacancies are 4. Email ID is this one. You also have selected an hiring manager for this, Sumit Kumar. Position status is open and approved. Chennai. I'm keeping this as blank for now. What is happening? Anyways, minimum budget is this value, maximum budget is this value. Open date. I'm giving the close date. I'm copying everything over here. All right. See, onto the user interface, what you can see, the minimum budget, maximum budget, and everything. They seems to be what? They seems to be a mandatory field because there is a red line. Although this I have enabled from the page layout. This is something from page layout and on the database level. On the both level, this is mandatory. But we cannot distinguish them. We cannot distinguish them over here onto the user interface. अगर आप पेज लेआउट पे जाके देखते हो तो वो अलग बात है, वो समझ में आता है आपको, बट यहाँ पर आप ऐसी कोई चीज नहीं है जिससे आप कोई फर्क समझे। कॉन्टेक्ट नंबर सीम्स टू बी व्हाट दिस, आई मीन इट्स नॉट मेंशन दिस इज एज अ मैंडेटरी फील्ड, सो मैंने उसकी वैल्यू नहीं डाली, राइट, बट आई हैव रिटन अ वैलिडेशन इन बिहाइंड, ऑलराइट, व्हेन आई सेव दिस व्हाट वुड हैपन, please enter the contact number. Now this appears to be a mandatory field, and this is the way to make it required. This is the way to make it required. This is the way to make it required from validation rule, right? This is the way to make it required from validation rule. So this is what something called as validation rule. So validations are for, like, if you are trying to insert something, you're trying to update something, you're trying to delete something on a record level. And before inserting, before updating, before deleting, you wanted to check for something. Right now, what I did, before inserting a new record inside position, I have checked the value of contact number. If contact number is blank, I throw an error. So that is what an validation rule. Before inserting, before updating, before deleting, if I wanted to check for something, and based on that, we are deciding कि कौन सा error हमको fire करने का है. That is something called as validation rules, right? So I cannot complete this by today. Tomorrow I would I'll continue with the same thing. Tomorrow we are going to come again, start with one-to-one, but rather we would directly go and create one-to-one association. So today it was like, what is one-to-one, how to create, and how to create a validation rule as well. All right. We'll finish it by tomorrow morning. Anyway, that's all for today, guys. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions?
Sir, we can apply more than one validation rule to one field, right?
Let me think of this.
Okay. And we can also apply that validation rule. Contact number should be 10, or email ID should be proper. That can we apply?
That could be done. What you asked, let me think about this. What could be the circumstances of having more than one validation rule on a single field?
Like contact number, I can say it must not be blank, and number should be not less than 10. Like
That we can design it in the same rule.
Proper.
We can design it in the same rule. There is no meaning to have two validation rules for that. I can do one thing, would be like, if this is my validation rule, right? If this is my validation rule, right? I can extend this formula. I can extend this formula, and what you have just told me was number. I mean, this is not the right formula, but this is the way to do this. This is, of course, is not the right formula. I have to check for that. If somebody enters more than 10 value, 10 numbers, we have to give the error. There is a proper function for that. I'll have to check it. But what I wanted you to understand is, like, कि we don't would, I mean, for example, what you are saying to me कि contact number में अगर कोई 10 digits ज़्यादा डालता है तो हमको error आना चाहिए, right? So, but we don't require to create two validation rules for that. In the same validation rule, you can put this condition in one bracket and put up an and over there, right? These are the operators, right? And equals to less than something, and operator like this. So you just have to put the operator and then impose your second condition. If you have some more condition, then again and put that condition over here. Okay, this is not that formula, but there is a formula मैंने बनाया था काफी पहले, मुझे चेक करने दो, वो भी किया है मैंने. है उसका एक फंक्शन है यार, नंबर नल वैल्यू. ठीक है, मैं ढूंढ के बताता हूँ, वो किया है मैंने काफी पहले. एक जगह मैंने एक वैलिडेशन रूल बनाया था जहां पे उसके अंदर की मैंने I have checked for how many the characters या numbers को check किया था मैंने. So,
Sure, sir.
but this is the way. Hopefully you have understand.
Yes.
You won't require to create another validation. Rather, you have in the same validation rule, you would have to extend the conditions. Conditions extend करते जाओ. चाहे जितनी कर लो आप, उसमें कोई issue नहीं है. Yes. Any another questions? Any another questions? All right.